Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Today I thought it might be interesting for some of you to see how I color coordinate my art supplies. Depending on the art supply, sometimes you need to do something to the tube of the paint or stick of a paint, you'll see what I mean in a second, to make it more easier to get to the right color quickly. So for example, I have got here these Holbein acrylic gouache, and I went ahead and colored the caps, just taking the paint and painting inside the cap there, and that way I can see exactly what the color looks like, because first of all, whatever is on the tube, it's not exactly what the color is like. As you can see here, great example. Let me just pop this down. So this is light red bright, and this is what it looks like on the tube, and then the actual color. I mean, it's close enough, but it looks different. So this allows me to see the color exactly as it is, and I store it in my cabinet, get it out, put it on my desk, or I get the right colors that I need for the painting and put it on my desk and use them. So that's one way. And because these are acrylic gouache, it means that they function like a gouache paint, so you can use water and you can dilute them. However, I like to use gouache in its full opacity, because if I want translucency, I would rather go to watercolor, and then they dry as acrylic paint, so they become permanent. So that's what I do with these. Then when it comes to watercolors, of course, we know the best thing to do is have some sort of a swatch card. So if you have a specific palette that you put together yourself or a palette that you bought, create a swatch card for each of those palettes, and that is the best way to see, because sometimes those half pans or full pans can look completely different when they are in the pan as opposed to on paper. So that is very important with watercolors, so we already know that. But I thought today let's talk about other art supplies. So for example, I have got acrylic paints. So these are, just to show you a few examples. So if we talk about golden acrylic paints, these are heavy body. Generally they're very good, and I don't need to do anything to them because they have a real swatch of paint right on the actual tube, and I can see the transparency, because you can see one is transparent and the other one is super opaque, so I know exactly the color and the opacity on the tube, and there is nothing that needs to be done. When I take, for example, Liquitex, with them it's a mixed bag, so sometimes I get a real swatch, which is great, or sometimes you get one of those kind of printed swatches, which, to be honest with you, are fairly close, so I have never run into any problems, and usually I know exactly what color I'm getting by looking at the printed swatch, so they're fine. Sometimes paints come, or acrylic paints come in these glass jars. I only have one so far, and with them, if you have many, I would probably recommend to do the same thing on the lid, because naturally you would store them like that, and then you could quickly look at the top and find your right color. Because I only have one, I don't really need, and judging by all the separation and the whatever is happening in this one paint, I don't think I will be increasing the number of these paints. I know there has been a hype. I mean, I think they're fairly affordable compared to golden, but I like golden, doesn't separate, works beautifully, so golden is my favorite heavy body acrylic, and then Liquitex as well. So I just love the colors that golden does. It has some staple colors there, one of which is this Indian yellow hue. I absolutely adore it in mixes or as it is. Love this color. Then we also have things like oil pastels. Now I have oil pastels, these are Sennelier, and I have a box of them. So when I open the box, they're in a black foam separator where they are individually placed there, and so I can see exactly what the color is, and generally that's what you get. The only thing is transparency. You wouldn't know that. For example, the Chinese orange has a great bit of transparency compared to, let's take sap green light, which is a bit more opaque, and that is the only thing you wouldn't know, but color wise they look exactly like what they are, so I don't need to do any swatches there. Then let's talk about acrylic inks. Acrylic inks and a medium that is between heavy body and acrylic ink. Let's start with acrylic ink. I have got Daler-Rowney, FW and Golden High Flow Acrylics. High Flow Acrylics is basically acrylic ink, and again Golden does the same thing with their acrylic inks, where the swatch is of the paint an actual swatch, and you know exactly what it is even just by looking at the dried up paint at the top of the nozzle, and it's like, yeah, no problems there, don't need to do any swatches. But the Daler-Rowney, I have a swatch card here which I refer to, and I make sure I place it in my studio somewhere where it will be accessible and I can quickly review the colors. Because of their nature, I do need to see what they look like. In the bottle they don't look like this most of the time anyway. So for example, if I'm talking about fluorescent pink, then yes, I know what the color is going to look, but others, they look slightly different. And also adding water and playing with them also creates all the way from this depth to this lightness to most of the colors. So they need a swatch card. If we talk about the middle ground, so between acrylic ink and heavy body, we have got the fluid acrylics. This is also by Golden, again because they're Golden, they have the same system of a real paint swatch on each of the tubes, and I don't need to do any swatches on the caps or anywhere. I know exactly what I'm getting. Also, I'm displaying my acrylic inks and the fluid acrylics on top of a cupcake 3-tier plate, and so I can see them all the time and I can see them. So that's that. Finally, I want to talk about oil sticks, and that's where the idea came for this video, is because I am currently using more of my oil sticks and I'm planning to use them. But what I find is when I need to get a right color, it's a bit of a struggle, because so at the moment I keep my blues and greens in a separate tin and then the rest of the colors in this tin. And basically, so this is how I keep them. They have a bit of a smell, so that's why I like to keep them separate in the cabinet, because if you don't, you open up the cabinet and you can get that smell. And by the way, as soon as you put them away into a tin with a lid or whatever box with a lid, the smell from the cabinet goes really quickly, so it's not lingering. It's not a very kind of chemical smell, it's just a smell that doesn't smell good to me. I like nice smelling things. And so it kind of smells old, I don't know why. If you ever been to like an antique shop and they have this really heavy kind of smell, I generally don't like. I can't be in an antique shop for too long for that because of that smell. So that's the smell that kind of reminds me of it. So let's have a look at this group of oil sticks. As you can see, they're fairly close in color. And when I'm painting and I know there's this specific color and I don't remember the name of it, it could be any one of those really, because they look so similar. But once you start painting, you realize, it's a different color, as well as it could be more purple or more pink when you start painting with it. And also the transparency is amazing as well. Some of them are super opaque and kind of matte, and then others are super glossy and kind of gorgeous and have that oiliness about it. The other thing as well, when you don't use them, there is a little film that dries over the top, and again that changes the color as well a little bit. For the oil sticks today, I want to do a swatch card so that I also keep it in my studio, and that way it'll be a lot easier for me to find the right color and also know exactly what color I have. I have a number of blues that look fairly similar in the stick form, but on paper they look different as swatches. So oil sticks are really messy to work with. If you get your fingers into them and then touch other things, it just will migrate throughout your entire studio. So if you have a lot of white in your studio, use these with care and attention. I am going to try my best in doing the swatches. You need to remove the film of each, and it's kind of like a bit of a long process, so I'll try to film it and share the colors as I go with you. Some of you might be interested in some of those colors, or you might have considered adding them to your supplies or to your color palettes. So therefore, let's do it together, I thought, and I will have a nice swatch card at the end of it. Okay, so we have got these kind of neutral and pinks colors here, and then I have some blues and greens over there. I am planning to extend my selection a little bit, but every time when I go to the shop and I have all of the colors there, I'm just not sure which ones I already have. So what I'm gonna do is, once I do the swatch card, I'll take a picture on my phone and then just save it somewhere so that I can refer to it next time, because I don't want to purchase the same thing again, obviously. Let's start with the lightest color, and I have got here the antique white. So sometimes you have to remove a bit of film, or sometimes you can just kind of go like this and it opens up the skin or the film that's dried on. So we've got this lovely color here. I also want to use a spatula to just pull out the color a little bit, and you'll see what will happen with some colors, that they are quite transparent. Next one we have Flash Ochre, and that I have contaminated with another color that I have been using earlier on. So I'll try to get rid of that. And again, I'll try to move this slightly out. See what I'm saying? I just touched the blue somewhere, I have no idea where, and it's already everywhere on my desk and on my paper. By the time I'm going to be finished with this, oh yeah, I had the blue on my pink for some reason. By the time I'm going to be finished with these swatches, I'm going to be covered head to toe in oil sticks. Next one, I think I'm going to do Raw Sienna. This is a very opaque color. And how do we know it's opaque? It's because there is no transparency in this color. So if I would just try to move this color, there isn't much movement in there. Next color is Mars Yellow. This is one of my favorites. So you can see the white of the paper coming through, and it's nice and oily, and you can't get it that dark. So those bits that are very dark are creating a lovely kind of textural effect, but I can't get it to be like solid as it was here. Now let's move on to the pinks. I think I will need to make the swatches a bit smaller as well, because I was hoping to get 5 in one line. So this is a lovely pink, and it's the Madder Lake pink. Next color is Alizarin Violet Lake. This is another Alizarin Violet Lake, but I remember it looks slightly different. so I wasn't sure why. So it's more kind of purpley, and it definitely looks very different in the stick form. So this is redder and this is a lot more violet, but both of them are 940. So maybe the formulation changed or something, but it's, yeah, it's more purple. Then we have Mars Violet, and I think this is, I already used it, so I'm just gonna go straight in. Looks quite dark, but if we try to pull out again, it's more of a opaque color, but it's not as matte as the raw sienna. So I think when I really fell in love with Mars Yellow, and there's going to be another Mars that I really liked, I then thought, let's see what other Mars colors they have, hoping that they all will be as transparent and gorgeous, but some of them are not. So this was one that isn't as translucent or transparent as the others. All right, moving on to another tray. So we've got all these done. Now we've got the kind of browns and reds. So let's start with red ochre. I think this one is quite opaque from what I remember. Usually ochre, even in watercolors, they are, or they tend to be more opaque, but it's a gorgeous solid kind of red color. Brown red. Next one is Mars Red, another Mars that I really love. It's just so beautiful, glides like butter, and has exactly the same quality as the Mars Yellow up here. As you can see, goes really lovely transparent. Then we have Burnt Sienna, a color that I like usually in all art supplies. And then we have three final colors. So we've got Raw Umber. It's a very beautiful chocolate, dark chocolate brown. 75% chocolate. Definitely not a milk chocolate. Raw Umber. I have decided to do my blues on a separate piece of paper, and that will leave me enough space for like additional new colors if I want to add and swatch them. So then we have got Sepia. So Sepia has a lovely green tone to it, and it actually has a similar feel to Mars Yellow and Mars Red, where you kind of get this sort of translucency there. You can pull it out and then see more yellow come through here, like olive green type of a color. So that's gorgeous. And the final one is the gold. I'm just trying to see if it actually is called gold. I had to wrap it in cling film because it has leaked. Yes, gold. If you love using gold in your art, this is definitely a good gold to consider. It's quite solid. And I love building up with it. So the gold seemed to have a slightly different texture from what it was when I first opened it, where you need to use a spatula knife or a palette knife, because otherwise when you try to build up texture like you would with the other paints, it just crumbles and it feels like it's just going to fall off. So therefore I had to use a palette knife. I mean, there's still texture, which is quite beautiful, but just not, for example, as here or even there. So that, the texture, I was not able to create that because it was just going to, it felt like a drier texture, whereas this one would dry as it is and not fall off, but with the gold, it's just a different way of working with it. I don't remember it being the case when I had it new. It's maybe a couple of years old. It seems to have changed slightly. So I'll give you a little close-up and you can have a look at the colors and textures. This alizarin violet lake looks so different. So now we have got greens and blues. I'll start with the greens purely because I only have two, and I have a lighter green, which is a cobalt green light, and olive green here. So this one is quite dry, and that's probably because it's a cobalt. So generally cobalts have that tendency as a pigment to be drier. And it's quite opaque. Next one, olive green. So this one has that oiliness about it, so you can create loads of lovely texture. In terms of pulling it out, it mixes well with lighter colors. I'll show you an example. So for example, here I've got this olive green here, and the lighter color that I used, the antique white, I think it was, no, it was the pink one, the flesh ochre on this side, then blended it, and also some of the blue kind of created that light turquoise color. Then I have 3 dark blues and 3 kind of medium to light. So I'm going to start with the lightest color here, which is the light blue. It's a gorgeous blue color. It's beautiful on its own, gorgeous in mixes as well. So it feels like there's a bit of white in there, and in fact the pigments are stated on all of the sticks. So there is PB15:3, which is like a Taylor blue, I think, PB29, and PW6. So PW6 would be the white. Then we have got cerulean blue, and cerulean blue, I think it's also a really creamy type of a color, similar to that Mars, very wet, very kind of beautiful and sort of glides nicely. Then we have cobalt blue, gorgeous blue. Also great for texture. And then I have the final 3 blues. So I've got ultramarine blue, and then I have indigo blue and Prussian blue. So indigo would be the darkest, so I'd say Prussian in the middle. Let's start with the ultramarine. Oh, that's a gorgeous blue. I should start using these blues more often in my art. Next one is Prussian blue. Also gorgeous blue color. Beautiful for textures, and I also like it when it's pulled out a bit. So this is the indigo blue, indigo blue. Also beautiful, intense color. Okay, swatch is finished. I have to say this was probably the most messiest swatching session that I ever had. I had to use a lot of tissues. You can't really use rugs with oil paints because it just will go all over the place. Let me give you a close-up of the blue colors as well. So we've got beautiful textures and different opacity levels. So the most opaque, I'd say, are the cobalt green light and the light blue. And then we have a level of transparency in the rest of the colors. and you can see how beautifully oily some of them are. That lovely light reflection I really appreciate, and all of these textures will remain, and I think they probably can be built up more. So if you wanted to, you could take a palette knife and then just scoop some out and just build your texture. It would take a long time to dry, but if that's something you enjoy in your artwork, then that's something you can do. So let me just bring in the other swatch card. Here they are, side by side. There they are. Gorgeous colors. I'm really missing a few pinks, if there is. I don't think there is like a pink that I have in mind, you know, something like a opera pink maybe. That'd be great. And yeah, gorgeous colors here. Maybe some grays, that would be a good addition. And a couple more greens. I think I'd like some more greens here as well. Also something like more of a mustardy color. That would be a great color. But otherwise you can mix colors as well. And I do love, like I said, mixing them on paper. They are really beautiful if you just basically go in with the oil stick. And I don't mind getting them dirty. You can wipe them off with a tissue later. But yeah, it creates a beautiful blend of colors. So I hope you found it useful and you had a good look at all of these colors, and maybe some colors you'd like to add to your collection of art supplies. And that is it for today. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.